Terra's Story, Chapter 9. Leaning her head against the airplane window, Terra let thoughts flow across her mind, but now without judging them or trying to control them. Simeona's words were among them, with little flashing neon colors attached. She remembered that conversation so well. Simeona had gotten frustrated with her, which didn't happen very often. Terra knew, because she'd been ruminating again, the same old frustrations. Simeona got her attention by slapping the table hard. "Terra, why don't you follow your thoughts to what they're trying to tell you about yourself? It's not working so well, is it, this thing you've been doing? Trying to force those thoughts into who you thought you ought to be." Simeona had startled the truth out of her, something she didn't know until the words popped out of her mouth. "But Mamo, I hate being so complicated. If I just get to the core, isn't life supposed to be simple? Other people seem to be able to be simple. Not so many layers, so many complications. Can't it just be easy?" And she'd laid her head down on the table and bawled. "Oh, stop, Terra!" Simeona whipped out the words. "You can only be who you are. And simple? A simple life? Or do you mean a superficial life? One where you don't have to do any digging to find your own truth, 'cause it just sits there on top of the water, floating wherever you decide to blow it." Terra couldn't think of anything to say to that. "Or are you thinking that simple means you can control things, make 'em fit how you think you could be happy? Really, Terra? You thought you could heal the hurt of losing Sam, make up to him that he died protecting you by going into police work yourself. How'd that work out for you, Now Terra didn't dare say anything, because Simeona's voice had dropped way down deep, and there was a glint in her eye that made Terra want to slink out of her sight. And Simeona paused, panting with the effort to hold back the anger that was exploding inside her. "And you'd rather not engage with magic, because who knows where that's going to lead you. Just blow off that old Mo-o, not to mention what you now got inside you. And me too. Just blow off your old auntie, 'cause heaven knows you can't take seriously anything that's not normal, that a gazillion million other people don't agree with." Simeona stood so abruptly her chair fell over behind her. She slapped the table again, this time for emphasis. "Girl, you get to be tired. You get to be overwhelmed. You get to be confused by this new sense of yourself. You get to feel all your feels. But you don't get to revert back to who you were trying to be when you came here. You were a helluva mess, if you'll recall, and just because you've got to go back and figure out what's real for you in that life, and you're scared shitless, well, stop it. Just stop it." So she had stopped it. She stopped trying to hold reality at bay. Terra let herself feel the strangeness, the disorientation, the nagging anxiety about what would happen and how she would feel about it. She didn't know how she'd changed or how she would change, and she would just have to find it all out, step by step, as she moved through the transition. Now, leaning against the window, she let all the unknowns flow through her. It was uncomfortable. She turned to look out the window. They were still way out over the ocean, nothing in sight, but what looked like tiny undulations on the glittery surface, all the way to the horizon. That made her nervous, too, so she turned away again, desperate to find a way to slow down the thoughts racing in circles through her mind. They were making her dizzy. She remembered the notebook and the smooth-writing gel pen Call gave her the last thing before she left him at the security gate. The notebook was big and the covers were sturdy for writing on your lap. It had hearts and flowers on it and said practicing self-love. Thanks, Dad. Terra had turned it over with a quizzical expression, thinking how childish it looked. A little embarrassing. But now it was just right for calming her inner craziness on her way back to what used to be her life, because she didn't really know how she was going to be, or what would happen next. So, yes, unexpected, yes, unconventional, but that girlish notebook worked really well for writing on a plane. It felt strange to walk into the police department and see all the uniforms. It was kind of a slap in the face. Thank goodness she didn't have to wear one anymore. But then she looked down at the pale blue silk of her tailored shirt, the dark brown corduroy jeans and jeans-cut jacket, and admitted to herself that she was wearing a uniform, just not the same one. After that, she got so busy that she didn't have time to think about anything except the work in front of her. Cap called her into his office and asked her about Molokai. He listened and he watched her, missing none of her body language or when she wouldn't meet his eyes. She hit the high points, the parts she hoped were believable, but she wasn't ready to own up to the part Sam had played in her life, and she sure wasn't going to tell him about Mama. But Terra got a burst of laughter out of him when she got to describing Simeona. Terra had sometimes thought Cap had more to him than met the eye, for two reasons. One, he never seemed to have a self-serving agenda as he negotiated between City Hall and his officers in the police's department. Two, his hunches. Cap didn't talk about intuition or guidance or use any of the words Simeona used to describe things, but he seemed to have some kind of inside track way more often than any other officers Terra knew. So she was glad to escape back to her own office and start going over with Joni what had happened while she was gone. By the time she twisted her key in her own door, Terra felt like her bones were dissolving. They did manage to carry her into the kitchen, where she immediately sat down on the stool by the counter and opened the cardboard box of Kung Pao chicken. She felt better after she ate and wandered into the living room where she flopped on the sofa to gaze out the window into the night. Being on the 4th floor, she could see the long, dense shadows of trees in the nearby park, knew well the indirect glow of the street lamps along the drive that wound through it, and the bright glare of the lights of the city on the other side of the dark stretch. Terra couldn't tell if she was comforted or disturbed by the sight. She couldn't tell if she was happy or sad to be back. Honestly, she felt a little, how did she feel? Numb. Like all her emotions had pushed pause. Well, thank you. I can use a break. She reached over to the coffee table for her pipe and packed it with sweet-smelling leaf. Relaxation rolled its wave of relief across muscles that had started to tense up. She pressed her fingertips into the muscles of her shoulders and remembered how she felt sitting outside at night on Kayla's lanai, telling him what had happened. Dad was the one person she never had to hold anything back from. She remembered how it felt to lean against him while she let the dark pull the story out of her, and how his arm felt draped around her so lovingly. She cherished the occasional squeeze when she shared something painful, and the atta-girl pats when she got excited and happy. She nodded off with those memories holding her. Terra's dreams were full of impressions, images that flashed by quickly without any reference to time or place. She swam through an ocean, not of water nor of air, but dark and dense enough to push against. She didn't have to push, though, as she was propelled by the same force behind her that the Mo was. She was just as shocked in the dream to realize that she had a tail as she had been in the pool with Mama. Flashes of Simeona pounding the table, another of her weeping as she hugged Terra goodbye, waving goodbye to Cal with the strange notebook in her hand. There was another image, one that stayed longer and made her really curious, because it was no one she knew but someone she found intriguing. His long, thick braid was black going gray, so he was probably about her age. He walked carefully like he had to pay attention, and with each step light flashed against a state-of-the-art metal prosthesis where a foot should have been. He didn't seem arrogant, though he held his head with soft pride, and his posture was chest out and shoulders back. He projected an aura of competence and confidence. In the dream, he turned around to look at her, stared directly into her eyes until she felt naked, then turned away and kept walking. A voice that came from everywhere and nowhere resounded in the cavern of her skull. "Not yet. You've got work to do first." Terra flopped over and moaned in her sleep.